So let's get started. And the first thing that we were going to look at is just, what do you all do to get in the right mindset to focusing on working with sellers? And I've got Ellen at the top of my screen right now. So Ellen, do you want to kick it off for us?
Um, well, I actually work with majority listings. That's just kind of what my business has always been. So when I'm actually going into getting into the mindset, my mindset already is that I have the listing. And I think that's the big thing. If you go in doubting that you don't have the listing yet, then that's already going to kind of put you behind. I always like to go over the stats and just kind of take the half an hour before I actually go into the listing to kind of prep myself, get in the right mindset. Like you say, the mindset is just focused on that client and what their needs are going to be, right? So what's their reason going to be for selling and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Very cool. So it's very much about taking that winning mentality right through the door with you. Like, this is my listing to lose.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Jeff?
Some similar stuff to that. So I go in with the right mindset that the listing is mine. I go in actually pre-envisioning it. So I try to show up about 5 to 10 minutes early in advance of my listing, and I sit outside of their house. I don't go up to it. I just, like sports psychology, I envision how the conversation is going to go. I envision certain objections they might have based on what I've pre-learned in my pre-conversations with them about their process, and try and project where that's going to go. I basically just tell myself that the listing is getting signed while I'm present, but to make sure that I'm adding value throughout the entire process and explaining our value proposition to them from top to bottom, so that they know that we're the best in the game and that they want to hire us by the end of that conversation.
Okay, very cool. So your addition is a lot of visualization as to how it's all going to go down as well.
100%. Oh, and a lot of heavy metal driving on the way to the appointment.
I was wondering where you're going with that. I was not on the same page as you for a second there until yep. I got you now. The heavy metal gets the juices flowing.
100%.
Jerry, what's up? What's up there?
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities to it. Just being that neighborhood expert as well, so you know exactly what you're talking about. Really, if you can name, because they're going to know, most of the sellers are going to know comps that have sold and everything as well. With technology out there these days, just being able to rhyme those off the top of your head and really clearly show them what the value prop is, your value prop is for listing with me, right? Same thing, going in with that attitude that listing is mine if I choose it. And really just focusing on the motivation of what they really want to accomplish at the end of the day, and going deep on that side and show them that we can make it happen for them. Okay.
And Ryan?
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of the same sentiments as the other panelists. I guess a few things, like I'm mentally preparing myself to ensure that right out the gate, I'm building good rapport and ultimately asking deep questions and getting good clarity from the prospective client on what's ultimately really important to them, and really digging deep to discover what I can do to help them. So I think if you can find that and build some good rapport, it often lets people's guards down and allows you to carry a better conversation.
Okay, so the big takeaway from all of you folks is have that mindset that the listing is yours if you choose it. We are well prepared with all of our numbers going in, and we're spending a lot of time building the rapport with the sellers, knowing that in the end we're taking this listing home with us. Very, very, very cool. Next up, we're going to say, why are seller leads essential in your business? And on this one, whoever wants to jump in first, go ahead.
Who wants to go? Jeff, go on.
Sure, I'll go ahead. Why are seller leads essential, or why is leading with the listing essential?
Well, why are seller leads so essential in your business?
Well, sellers are at the core of what we do. So especially in a seller's market like we're in right now, you're getting a lot of your lead and leverage coming from that listing, which is going to convert to more opportunities to grow your business. Open houses lead to more potentials for buyers and sellers. Sign calls, online executions. There's a phrase that a realtor once taught me: you've got to list to exist. And I've kind of lived by that. In order to be actually present and showing people that you're active in the marketplace, you need to get listings up on the marketplace and share with them your execution, your value, your exposure to the market and that you're actually doing the thing week over week over week in the currency of the marketplace.
Okay. That makes a ton of sense. Jerry, you
Mhm.
look like you're ready to jump in.
Yeah, no, I'd say it is the lifeblood of your business, right? At the end of the day. And if you can farm around that listing and get another listing or get a buyer out of that as well, make that a priority, your business will thrive. We made that shift probably about 2 years ago of really concentrating more on listing leads and then executing around that listing as well. And it's been a game changer. And then you're in control. You're in control of your business too, right? Because that listing, if even in a market like what we're seeing right now, if you're working with majority of buyers, you're going to start losing out a lot. You're going to lose a lot of transactions coming up in the market that we're coming into. So having a pipeline of listing leads and nurtures that are going to list this year it really keeps your business going.
Okay. Ryan?
Yeah, again, I'll echo what Jeff and Jerry just shared. The opportunities that can come from the listing. I mean, the reality is more often than not, it's less time invested in the client as well. Open houses, door knocking, farming, sign calls, everything they touched on. The more listings you have, generally, you're going to have more business. And the nice part about listings too, a high percentage of the time, they're going to be purchasing something as well.
Right. Right. Alan, anything to add?
Well, I think the best, well, for me, because I'm trying to take over a local market, obviously it matters to me that I get listings because my face is everywhere. I put my face everywhere. It gives me a reason to put my signs everywhere. And then also it gives me a reason to walk the neighborhood. So I don't know, frozen?
I think, yeah, you've gotten frozen here.
Okay. Hold on.
We can still hear you though.
Okay. If you can still hear me, then that's fine. By 2% listing instead of a 2% buyer, like on the buying side, because I think that value you get from that marketing is so much more important when you have that the listing. So yeah, I think it gives you reasons to do things too. Like I like the fact that you can walk the street and talk to all the other neighbors, and it's always contacting them personally. And I like a lot of my sales are within the same geographical area, even within Listwell. It's within a small portion of Listwell. So yeah, it just gives me another reason to touch base with them.
Okay. So the big takeaways here that I heard from all four of you, number one is that listings lead to more business. And if you're going to continue to build, you build it by having listings so that you can go and get more business out of the same neighborhood. One listing should lead to 2 or 3 pieces of business. It seems like that's the real big takeaway. And two, oh, enough. Sorry, everybody. I don't have to go pick you up today, MJ. Sorry, and then at the same time, it's also a matter of how much time goes into your listing. I know, Ryan, you had mentioned there's a lot less time in the listing, which is very important. And then Jerry, you were mentioning, I mean, the difference between showing buyers around and losing multiple times and doing the same job over and over again. Whereas the listing, you do that job once, and really the portion of the job that's the most influential on your business is finding more business from that listing.
Yeah.
I heard a stat once upon a time. I don't know if you guys have heard this. The average time that you work with a listing is about 8 hours. Average time that you work with a buyer is about 24 to be able to navigate. And I would say in the seller's market that we're in, there's a potential that it's higher than 24. You know, and I probably don't put 8 hours of, well, maybe with open houses into my listings now. So yeah. It's, you know, and you are controlling your commission. So your commission is higher on the return on a sale. And it's in this market, I would say it's pretty close to a guaranteed sale, as opposed to your buyers where you're losing by the stats, 35% of them, you know, for buyer burnout, so, or whatever the reason. So just something to be aware of, like you're closing a lot more of your business with listings than you are with buyers.
Right. And so when we look at the actual dollar per hour is what we're talking here too, right? I mean, right. If we're only putting 8 hours into a listing, not only is our dollar per hour higher because of that, but Jeff, great point. You control your income a lot more with the listing. I mean, it's not often. I can speak for team anyways, where, you know, on the listing side, we're not at minimum 2.5%, if not 3 on almost all of them. Whereas when you're running with the buyers, you're kind of at the mercy of whatever's being offered out to you, right? Good point, Jeff. Great point. So since we're talking about seller leads, what would you say are your top 3 sources right now where you guys are all finding your seller leads?
I'd say for me, it's door knocking, online lead gen, and then Sphere. Like Sphere was, I'd say Sphere number 1, door knocking number 2, and online leads is 3.
Okay. Anybody else have different sources that you're working with, or different order that you're finding it?
My
Ryan?
door knocking and my online are exactly the same. And this particular year, we're a little heavier on past client and agent referral, but like I'm pretty well balanced across a bunch of different categories. So, and it's all like grunt work stuff. It's not really paid resources. I don't like to pay for resources.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I like doing the sweat equity stuff and I work pretty hard for it. So it does pay off pretty well.
So your sweat equity, that's your follow-up, that's your door knocks.
Yeah, I've tossed away cold calling. I don't really do it anymore. There was a period of time where it was saturated. It's not saturated anymore from what I understand, so it might be worth doing again, but I've always preferred the in-person conversation. There's a lot more power to having that in open houses, in door knocking executions, than there is in doing a cold call to somebody on a phone call, because they can't get your expressions, they can't get your emotions. So there's a lot more good stuff in a conversation that comes from somebody with the door.
Okay. Ellen?
Oh, I wasn't sure if I was still here. So one of my other sources is actually flyers. I send them out monthly, and I've done it since I've started. And currently I send them out to 4,000 houses every month. So I get to advertise my own listings, and I've noticed I actually get listings from the flyers themselves, almost 1 a month right now, which is pretty awesome since I've launched my new branding. The other one is door knocking, obviously, but it kind of goes in turn with visiting clients. So my clients are within the area that I live in. So anytime that I have an extra half an hour, I always go and visit someone, and you never know what kind of conversation you get from there. It's not that you're specifically asking them to sell their house, but they actually let you know that, oh, you know, I've heard that this person might be selling. And yeah, that's how I normally get my leads.
Okay. And what about you, Ryan? Anything that you've got going on that's a little bit different or more of the same?
Much again, most of the same. I mean, in the past, for sale by owners was I felt the low hanging fruit. They've got their hand up. Yeah, they're more difficult to deal with at times. But if you, again, build some good rapport, they can build some trust in you. I think there is certainly some opportunities there. And past listings, canvassing around areas where you've sold real estate, and door knocking.
Okay.
Referrals, past clients. Yeah.
So the one real common that I heard from everybody right now is door knocking. That came up with everybody, but primarily it's the face-to-face, the voice interactions. It's actually being out, Jeff, as you said, it doing the grunt work. When we're prospecting, that's where we tend to find our listings. If we're pretty much just waiting for online sources to kick in, the majority of that's going to be buyer heavy on you. But to find yourself the listings, you're out there face to face, belly to belly, talking to people.
Well, that's the interesting thing, is I'm about even on buyers and sellers for my door knocks this year. I'm 3 and 2.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And again, your best source is still right there in somebody's face.
Yep.
It's it almost sounds a little simplistic, doesn't it? We always try to look for the next shiny object, when really all 4 of you are sort of saying the same thing, where you get most of your stuff through those activities.
I think the key.
I mean, I just think.
Go ahead, Ellen.
Go on, Jeff.
Okay.
Somebody go.
Okay. I just think that the market is so saturated online now with those videos and everything. It just says a lot more when you actually come to the door and have a conversation about the local market to them, instead of, you know, just posting a video about the local market. And that's how I started my business. I went to door 350 homes for like 8 months straight, and that's where I got 90% of my business in my first year. So being willing to talk about the local market, like because Listowel is very small. People have never had that before, and now all of a sudden, you know, all of these other local agents are putting out market reports for Listowel as well. So it's good that everyone's allowing everyone else to be more educated about the market. But I still think personal is always been the core of my business.
I love it. I love it. So yeah, more of the same. It's just really about knowing your market and getting in front of people.
Alan, we're gonna have a separate conversation about that saturation of the video thing.
Yeah.
Out in your area, you would crush on video. Absolutely
Yeah.
crush.
Okay. Let's sort of flip just a little bit here. And what would you folks say are your top 3 challenges in your businesses right now with where we are in this market?
Oh, I just thought you meant in general, and I'm like, well, let me list it for you.
Let's stick to business for now, but
Yeah.
we can do a therapy session later.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, number one, our transactions are down 45%. So the reality of getting listings right now, the big challenge that I believe in my perception that's out there right now is you've got the largest demographic, which are the baby boomers that have the inventory and they own it outright. They're a value-driven generation raised by Depression-era parents. So they saw what they could have had last February at the peak. They see what they can get now that we're down 21%, and they don't want it. They want what they could have had. So they decide not to list their houses, which drives our prices up again, which is great, but not to the point where it was. So our inventory is way down. So those conversations with that particular demographic that has the most amount of inventory, it's a little bit more challenging to get them to move past that point of decision, right? To make that transition, because they also are buying something in a seller's market, and that gap is often not as big as they want it to be in terms of price, right? That's a challenge.
Okay.
It's one for me. Ryan, do you go next?
I wrote down 2 as you were chatting away there. One being inventory, I guess, on the buyer side of things. That is a challenge that we're really experiencing right now. Just not a lot of good opportunities out there. And the ones that are really good opportunities, they're aggressive, a lot of buyer activity. So we're starting to see that. And I anticipate, at least in my local market, it continues to grow. Second point being price points. I know, Jeff, you just alluded to like 21% down in your market. What I'm seeing is like reference to first-time home buyers. To get anything that really doesn't require substantial work, you really got to spend, in my market, Brantford, Brant County, probably 800,000. Shopping with a few people that are looking in the 7s right now, and a lot of them really require work, or they really have to settle on what their want and need list is.
So it's the point of entry that you're really struggling with in your markets.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Another big challenge that we're all facing right now is the rise of teams. It's a pretty significant dynamic, because I keep watching the teams take more market share, and that's not going to change. That dynamic is going to continue to grow. So it's important, either as a single agent, that you know how to position yourself and your value proposition in a really effective way, and how you're better than what a team dynamic brings to the table, or you learn to grow inside a team or create your own team dynamic to be able to capitalize on what's happening right now. Over the last year, I've just seen it absolutely everywhere. Seems like everybody's starting a team up.
All right. So knowing your value proposition as that solo agent, and what would differentiate you from the rest of the majority of your competition, which in today's market is becoming more and more that team dynamic.
The good news is most of the people on the teams don't actually make phone calls, so you still have lots of opportunity to take market share.
Yeah, I guess that totally depends on your team and your team's culture. I can vouch for that one. I know that's something that we do at a very high level. We're constantly prospecting, but you're right, a lot of teams out there just don't have that philosophy. So
Yep.
There's room out there if you're going to do those grunt activities that we always talk about. Anybody else having any challenges right now, and what are you doing to overcome them?
I would say mine's strictly like it's the inventory and the fear base, right? The fear of where are they going to go. That's the biggest pushback that we get right now, and that's directly tied to the inventory.
Okay.
I just think the general transactions right now, at least that I've been dealing with, have been the 3Ds, that the worst and downsize. So they've all been extremely emotional, as opposed to the last couple of years. It was like just the greed driven kind of market where you just want the top dollar, everything sold within a week. I find that you're doing a lot more counseling, you have people crying at the table a lot more. It's just a lot more mentally draining as an agent. And obviously the values are quite down. So you're working for a lesser dollar, but of course we're never going to see, well, we probably will see this again, that the prices will go up, but just in general, it's just a lot more grinding and hard work and counseling basically.
So we're seeing, what I like that you mentioned though, Ellen, was focusing on the 3Ds, because we do know that our inventory levels are down right now. I mean, you've all mentioned it. I don't know necessarily about Listowel or Brantford and Brant County, but I know where we are in KW here, you know, we're still hovering at that 1.2, 1.3 months of inventory level, which is what we saw the last time we moved into a super seller's market. But the big difference then was we were still seeing 7, 8, 9, 900 houses moving in the course of the month without fail, and having that 1.3 months of inventory, if not a little bit less.
And the 1.5% interest rate.
Yeah, well, exactly. And so now that even though our absorption rate and our inventory levels are about the same, the difference being is it's taking that long for fewer properties to sell, right? So Ellen, you saying you're focused on those 3Ds, and I know that's something that makes a ton of sense, and we talk about it quite often, is death, divorce, and downsizing. Well, these are the people with needs, right? They're the people who need to move. It's not the speculation anymore of, well, if you can get me this amount, I'll do it. And so shifting your mindset, who am I looking for? The motivated. So that makes a ton of sense, Ellen, where you're coming from on that one. We can all agree that there's some challenges in this market, and it sounds like you guys are all finding the right ways to get around them. And so thanks for sharing that with everybody.
I'm going to give a fourth one, and it's not a D, just something that I've been seeing in my business a fair bit, more so this year than I've seen in past years for listings. I'm seeing a number of investors that are offloading an investment property or multiple, but I'm seeing them offload an investment property, at least one, because of the interest rate hits that they're taking. The return they're getting off of their tenants versus their interest rates is no longer a surplus, or it's marginalized, and it's not worth them staying in that particular vehicle. They may have $400,000 or $500,000 in equity sitting in the product that they want to take out and use for something else because the interest rate doesn't really make sense for them at this point in time. So they're unloading them, and I've had a number of sales as of late that are doing that.
So we're finding people that are starting to liquidate a few of their assets just because it's no longer viable to stick around the property. That's what you're saying.
Yep.
And are you finding, are these people that you're finding just from your sphere, your past clients, or how are these investors? How are you approaching them?
Some are sphere, some are past clients. Some, quite honestly, are online. So we have people to reach out to us based on our online presence. So it's we have a pretty solid one. So it's a good conversation at that point in time, because there's a lot of knowledge shared as an investor myself that kind of aligns with them, and I understand where they are. I'm in the same place myself with a number of my investment properties, you know, having considerations of unloading them because we're not seeing a cash flow return on them. When you start taking $1,000 hit per property, it starts to sting a bit. So, you know,
Right.
I get the considerations for it and why it makes sense for them to unload it. So they just want top dollar, and that's what we offer.
Okay. Now, we've touched on this a few times so far, and everybody's sort of alluded to it, and that's the value proposition. Now, Jeff, you were just making mention of, well, you know, you're an investor as well, so you're able to convey that aspect of your value proposition to people. What is it that everybody's doing when you're meeting with your prospective clients, either be it a new seller, a listing appointment? How are you conveying that value proposition that you all bring to the table? I guess first of all, we could look at it, and the simple fact is, you guys all know your value proposition. Let's just start there. a lot of the time we know that agents don't necessarily dig deep into that, and therefore it's hard to convey it. So why don't we, if anybody has wouldn't mind, would you mind sharing your value proposition with the rest of us so that those who don't have one kind of get an idea of what we're even talking about?
I don't mind starting. I won't go too deep into the full value proposition, but again, a priority of mine in ensuring that the client I'm sitting in front of, potential client I'm sitting in front of, truly understands, like, really we're here to take care of them. You know, we do and have always offered 100% satisfaction guarantee. We have it in writing. We share that information with them right from the start. And again, asking them questions is what's important to you and getting a clear understanding. And you'll find when you're listening to them, they're going to let you know what it truly is that's really provoking the move, or excuse me, maybe some issues that they've had in the past or things that they've heard. And again, just being honest, being ethical, and at the end of the day, building good rapport with the client and trust is kind of where we position a lot of our focus. And then as well, we do dig a lot deeper into the power and the value of a team, and what we bring to the table.
Okay. Ellen.
I mean, my value proposition, well, generally when I go in, all the heavy lifting has been done for me. Like, these people are calling me because they want to list with me. So when I'm talking about what I do within a listing, I like to talk about all the different kinds of marketing that I do. So for example, I go on the radio every other Saturday, which is the local radio. I send out the flyers. You get the flyer advertising, you get the online marketing as well via Facebook and Instagram. And then soon my website will be up too. So then it'll be advertised on Google and everything too. My big thing, my big focus when I work with clients is just being personable, being honest, and setting realistic expectations. Because if we're starting at a really high price, like over 100,000 of what I expect a house to sell for, and where they expect to land, generally I choose not to work with them, because that expectation is just we're already setting each other up for failure, basically, right? And I've seen those houses go to market and go off the market again. And I mean, yes, sometimes I walk the wrong way, but I'm okay taking those risks, because what people expect from me is when we list a house, we sell the house. And I've heard that multiple times. And we don't do multiple drops, kind of thing, right? In general, we're listing at the right price. So yeah.
So it's making sure you're having real powerful, strong conversations right up front with the sellers, managing and setting expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Jerry?
I think, like, my value prop comes down to having a clear conversation in even that pre-listing qualification process, right? So it may change when I go, like, depending on what is going on in each scenario as well, right? So going into the appointment, knowing that I'm fully equipped with everything that's happening, I can dial my value prop to be into what that seller is actually looking into, right? If they're leaning more into that marketing side of things and they want to see exactly what we're going to be doing for marketing to get them top dollar, how can we get as many eyes as possible on that house? That's what I'm going to spend more time on in that listing appointment, right? If it's a high D personality, they want to know where they're going to be in and out quick. I'm going to alter that presentation to be in there, spend the time on the important parts that we need to be, and give them as much value as possible, but then also making sure I'm not hanging around trying to be their friend, knowing that communication style doesn't work for that person. Right. So I think it dials back to is the conversations that you have leading up to the appointment can prepare you a lot better for when you're in appointment, and you know the areas to focus on.
So you're the first person so far that brought up the pre-qualifying. Mm-hmm. And so, Jerry, when you're pre-qualifying a seller, what does that look like to you?
I've got a list of questions that I go through. If I'm setting an appointment, it's just a matter of, hey, do you got 10 minutes to answer a few questions so I can be the best prepared for our appointment tomorrow? And I go through and I ask what's important about them for the agent that they choose, what's important about the home sale, where do they want to be realistically for their sale price. And, you know, if they've talking to any other agents as well. So I get a clear scope of what's happening in their world, in their situation.
Okay. And Jeff?
Value proposition, sure. So I'm extremely data driven in my presentations. I start by my conversations by sharing with them what's going on in the market, so they understand the market dynamics before I lead into anything about my company or myself in terms of our executions. It's kind of a mix between hard data information in front of them and sharing with them my experience in listing properties in every type of market and what they can expect through the process. I find that when I present my listing presentation with confidence, the data stuff really gets them going to understand why the market functions the way that it functions and the timelines that are important to sell. And then the execution or the explanation of how you list and market effectively and what to expect and the types of buyers that you're going to expect at the table. That shows my knowledge of my execution, that I do this an awful lot. They understand my expertise on it. And by that point in time, they're listing with me because they don't really want to talk with anyone else.
Okay. So you mentioned being very data driven. Something I can relate to. I think you and I get on the same page that way quite often. Now, when you're saying being data driven, what kind of data is it that you're bringing to the sellers when you're delivering and you're getting them to understand? Because it sounds to me like you do a lot of educating while you're there.
I do. I find it incredibly important to educate because most agents are quite crappy at doing that part of the job and sharing that. And it's the biggest asset transaction that somebody's going to have in their existence. So when it comes to the market side, I take the 5-year data graph of where we've ebbed and flowed, and I explain to them why certain points in time are really aggressive in the selling price escalation, why certain points are lull periods of time, and what it looks like for them in the specific period of time that they're looking to list. So we can strategize. Like I really don't list properties in November and December because if I've got anybody that if they need to sell, I will. But if anybody's considering it, I really encourage them to look at Jan, Feb, March for the following year, because in our marketplace, that's where our acceleration is. Lowest levels of inventory, most number of buyers that are hitting the market. I explain to them the buyer categories that exist at that time, and then they can make a decision whether they're going to list with me at that time, and that's important, or if they can afford to wait. Either way, I've got them because I'm giving them a ton of value to share with them. They're going to get more money next year at this period of time. And I share with them why. Then I launch into our 82-point marketing plan. I share like 5 points or 3 points off of it, and then tell them, like, I'm not going to take you through everything because you're going to get really bored. Just know that we executed at a very high level, and that's why we have these results. And I share the data of our listings and what it looks like over the last 2 years. We sell our product for 3 to 4% higher than the average realtor does in the marketplace. Those are our numbers and our stats because of the way that we execute on our marketing. And we also have a few very unique exclusive things that we do in our marketing platform that nobody else is doing. So I highlight those because that's what makes my value proposition different from others. Like, you all get my email, right? When I send out a listing, every one of you gets a reverse prospect or an all agent email, but there are literally like 3 or 4 agents that are doing that platform right now out of 2,500 agents. Right, that are actively marketing to other agents. Why? Because they're worried about what the other agents are going to say. I don't give a shit. So like it's really effective at marketing. My showings go up when I do it, and we get the house sold. That's my job. So I've got maybe 300 agents that have been pissed off with me out of 2,500, and 87% of them are gone in 3 years. So I don't care.
Okay. I see where you're coming from. Now, there's a couple things that I sort of heard from all of you folks on this one. Number one was the being prepared going in again. It sounds to me like you've all got your systems worked out at a very, very high level. So what are some of the things that, when you discuss your listing system for the people on the call today that maybe are a little bit newer or kind of still have the winged approach, what are some of the things that you always do before you go to the listing and while you're at the listing? So, for example, Jerry, you were talking, you never miss your pre-qualification call, correct?
Yep.
Now, when you go to the listing, do you have a standardized type of listing that you go through every single time?
Yeah, like a standard listing presentation, yes. I'd say the biggest thing is always close. Always ask for the business, right? Like I feel a lot of agents actually miss that aspect, is they go in and they build rapport and they become a friend, but they don't actually ask for the business or close multiple times for the business. That would be the biggest thing. having the comparables as well, pendings and closed, any active, going through the competition that's available right now as well, along those lines.
Right. So
Yeah.
when you're going in and you're going through the same processes every time,
Yes.
you have
Yeah.
the confidence at that table to go for the close, like you're saying.
Yes.
Okay, and you know what? I'm going to agree with you. I feel like that is a big missing piece. Many agents don't go for that close. Is that something that the other three of you also make sure that you're doing every time you're in there? Are you closing multiple times?
Yes.
No.
Biggest
No.
failure of salespeople in every industry is not to ask for the business. Always has been, always will be. Every industry I've been a part of.
Okay.
I always leave it open. Like, I don't get me wrong, I will always have the listing agreement with me. I will always have it filled out and ready to go. But if for some reason that there's I don't like, the people that I generally work with are 45 to 50 and older. So I'm not worried that they're going to go to someone else. It's never happened to me. And my initial conversation with them is always a conversation about the market and what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. I will always have the stager. I will always have the videographer ready to go the following week, so that I don't give them enough time to even talk to any other agents. Like, we already have a plan, but then I just make it all within the same week. I don't actually sign it within that day because I think the initial conversation is already just so intense for someone that probably hasn't sold their house for the last 10 years, 20 years, right? So I do that differently. I know you guys are always closing, but I always wait a few days.
How many realtors are in Listowel?
Quite a few. I mean, I'd say probably 60.
60, right?
Yeah.
We're talking 2,500 in Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge. So
Yeah.
what the difference between our approaches, and I totally get why you're doing what you're doing, is because they're calling you for business because you've preset the stage with your marketing. They're calling you into their house, right? When we're outdoor knocking, we're out doing proactive measures that they don't know us. They don't know who we are, other than to research us on Google or have a look at our past history where they can find it online. Your marketing has already sold them, right? You've already got the business because you've sold them on who you are, because you keep hammering them with the GeoFarm, repeat, and it's an awesome way of doing business. That's why you don't need to close. For most of the people that are watching, they're not doing that. They do need to ask for that business to be able to close it consistently. It is the biggest failure of salespeople that aren't preset and having people call them. And I love that you're doing it, because it's honestly the next step for my business is doing the geofarming side of things, because it is proving to be very successful for many realtors that are in my circle. I just haven't put money into it because I'm cheap.
Yeah, it works.
What about yourself, Ryan?
Sorry, again, what was the question?
Yeah, so when you're in there at your listing appointment, number one, you've got a system that you do follow every single time, and what does that kind of look like if you do? And then two, are you also aggressively asking for a close and trial closing multiple times while you're there?
Well, again, do we have a system? Yes. We more often than not have to pivot and adjust and how that's going to go, right? You got to get a read on the people sitting in front of you. We bring, again, depending if let's say it's a haven't met. My friend told me I should give you a call. We're thinking of selling our house. Why don't you come by and give us a price? Following that conversation, I'll ask some pre-qualification questions. What's your timeline? Are you interviewing other agents? The basic questions that I would assume most people would be asking. From there, I flip them a direct link to our website, as well as a direct link to what we have is our seller's guide. We have a buyer's guide as well for that avenue. And then I bring tangible copies with me when we get through the door. And I advise people prior to that to read through the seller's guide to get a good understanding, navigate to the website, get to know us a little bit further, check our social accounts. And we have enough video content and reviews and whatnot on there. If people do that, and I find more often than not, they are, the listing presentations go a whole lot quicker. And again, as I alluded to earlier, that's why I'm able to get in there and just ask the questions and build the rapport, exude the trust and the confidence in what we do. Are we always closing? Again, situations unique. If it's a referral from a friend or family members, and kind of as Ellen alluded to, we know it's ours? Likely not. Like, for example, we went on one last week. Stager went in Monday. We'll be shooting it on Monday. I'm signing paperwork this coming Friday. But the trust was built. Is that a mistake? Maybe it should have been signed right away. But again, every situation's different. Alternatively, if you know you're competing against other agents, you absolutely have to ask the questions and kind of isolate. Like Mr. and Ms. Seller, based on everything we talked about today, we've agreed on this. Is there anything that's holding you back from signing the agreement and getting me to work for you right away? If the answer is no, everything's good, or, well, we want some time to think about it, just again, digging deeper and kind of isolating, well, what is it? And we know more often than not, it's going to come down to commission or price, or they're having thoughts of interviewing some other people.
Okay, actually, Ryan, you led me right to where I was going to go next. And I was going to talk about some of the common objections that we all see. And I was going to get you all of your advice on the different ways that you tend to handle them or to get around them. So you mentioned, Ryan, some of the isolation technique there, which is obviously fantastic. Now, if you were to help us through a quick commission objection, let's say, you and I right now, if you were going to use your isolation technique, how would that sound? So if I'm going to say to you, you know what, Ryan, 6% seems a little bit high.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I respect that. And let me ask you, like, what is it about the 6% that you feel is high?
Well, it seems like a lot of money. I want to keep as much of it as I can.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And I completely respect that. And I think at that point, again, it's tough for me to go deep into this because I don't have previous context in what that conversation was. But, for example, say somebody's like, Ryan, I got somebody, he's out here, he's willing to do it at 4% or 3%. I hear a lot of 3% in my marketplace. Fully understand, fully respect that. One objection handler, I guess I would have, if this potential realtor on the other end is willing to discount something that should be of importance to him or her, how strongly do you feel they're going to do when it comes down to negotiating the sale prices of your home? I truly accentuate the fact that experience does matter. Negotiation skills are a skill, and just not all realtors are equal, right? And Jeff alluded to earlier, and we've had stats in the past which show that on average, we are netting our sellers more return. So at the end of the day, say we're at 6 and we're competing against a 4, I've got a 2% swing. Mr. and Ms. Seller, would you not agree that really we're talking about 2% here? Okay, perfect. And then we can go deeper. We do stage properties. We do invest in our listings with sponsorship on online social media as we have. Again, I would go into a whole bunch more things depending on the context of the conversation.
Okay. And it sounded to me, Ryan, like you knew exactly what you were going to say right there. You didn't really have to think too much about how much time do you spend with the team role playing and practicing common objections?
If I'm being honest, not as much as we should. But that being said, we are coached by business coaches, and it's a massive component. Like, we're in bold right now, and really the simple daily task is 20 conversations and role play 5 days a week, right? Like, that's truly the secret sauce to real estate, because you have to know what to say and how to say. Now, for newer people in the industry, I think it's a whole lot more important. Again, myself, 15 plus years experience, we've had a lot of those conversations. And at the end of the day, majority of the objections are pretty much the same ones that we, from experience, know how to handle.
Agreed. While we're on the topic, because I think it's great for some people that are a little bit newer to the business and haven't been through a lot of these objections or just get caught flat-footed. I'm going to toss the one out there about the price. The other agent told me that they would sell it for $950, and you're coming in here telling me it's going to be $9. Does anybody in here want to step up and handle that one the way they will? Okay, Ryan, let's keep going.
I wouldn't mind, actually, because that's a common one. And Ellen alluded to this earlier of setting expectations. And again, that's what I tell them. Look, I'm not the agent that's going to come out here and tell you your house is worth $1 million when it's truly not. We're in the business of selling homes, not just listing homes. And what I say is I'm going to do my due diligence, I'm going to do my research, and I'm going to come forward with a price that you can truly make plans on moving forward. And I also follow that up by saying, Mr. and Ms. Seller, we may not agree on the number that I share with you, but I'm doing my part in setting a realistic expectation. And I say, I welcome you guys to challenge me. If I'm saying 9 and you're saying 1 million, let's have that conversation and see what it looks like. But at the end of the day, I want to set that expectation. So if we list at $1 million and we're not getting the activity or the results we want in the next 15 to 30 days, we have to make some adjustments. So I think just setting the expectations, that's a big part of my business, being very clear on the good news and the bad news.
Okay. Anybody else have a way of handling that in a different matter, or is that pretty much the same thing everybody's doing?
I'm similar as well, but if you have the comp, we're talking price, right? If they want more money, have the comps in front of them too, and have them tell you what's different and what makes up the extra $100,000 that you want in your house.
I love that, Jerry, and I'll chime in quick there too. That's exactly what I do, and I always have. Is I still come old school, everything printed in that aspect, and I lay everything out for people, lowest to highest, with other comps that are in the range, and then I'll make them legit tell me to stop when we get to the one that is now nicer than theirs. And it's almost impossible for people to still sort of tell you that, well, there's no way, no, this is $1 million, when you are now telling me that this is sliding in here at 925, right? Like, you're picking it, you're using the data, like Jeff says, right? You bring the data for them.
I've enjoyed that I've gotten away from that stuff though, because quite honestly, there's so many conversations I would get into where you're going through the list of what's better and what's not, and they still think it's better. And they still think that they're improved over ones that aren't, like, are clearly better than theirs. And I just, I lean more towards my results now. I lean heavy on the results that we've procured. The reason we're in dialogue and the reason we're in conversation is the fact that they want to meet with me because of my success. I've explained to them at that point in time the way the market works and what they can expect from our results. And they don't really go back to the numbers at that point in time, because I'm finding that sellers this year in particular, and I guess last year in the heat of battle, are really understanding the idea of a low listing market strategy, or low listing price. I call it the marketing price, in order to achieve the momentum necessary to create 3 buyer groups to your table when the time comes. And I don't get questioned on it anymore. So, and at the end of the day, I've had a couple in there, especially October, November, December, that they weren't getting the results that they were looking for. And the conversation then on the back end is you've effectively gotten a number of offers to the table for their house. And you can talk about the market value. This is market value for your home. And you can choose if you're going to accept it at this point in time, but this is where the market is. And I had everybody but one accept their market value at that point in time.
And so when you're setting that marketing price, so in your mind, let's say you're thinking, it should be a 700 marketing price for the price point that we know is the goal to finish towards.
Right.
Now, when a seller is saying to you, that's too low, we can't go that low, we'll never get the offer that we need out of it, how are you handling that part of it?
Yeah, I tend to agree with them depending on where I'm at. I don't go too low anymore. Back in 2022, 2021, it didn't matter. It really didn't matter what you set your price at. The acceleration of the market was the acceleration of the marketplace, and it would go really, really high. There wasn't really a bridge gap. I started testing it out in December with a couple of listings in January again, and that bridge gap was about 60 grand at that point in time for our market here. It's now grown to about 150 in our marketplace. So I do have that dialogue with them to say, listen, the bridge gap is now somewhere around 80 to 150 for this price point. I understand that you feel it's too low, but in order to achieve the results of the 3 buyer categories to your table, we need to be very aggressive on price, because price represents 75% of the marketing of a house. At the end of the day, if I overprice this property, I can throw thousands of dollars at marketing to tell the market how much I've overpriced your house, and they still won't show up, right? If we price it effectively and my marketing has its chance to work, you're going to get the results that you're looking for on offer day, ideally. And that kind of ends the conversation.
Okay. A lot of what I got from you there was confidence.
100%.
So when you're interacting with the seller across the table and we're talking about these things, confidence.
Yeah.
I noticed a lot of language of sales coming out of you right there as well, as you're leading them down that road and you're giving them the data that they need to make the right decisions. So I feel like that's something that if we don't have that part of it, and that's coming prepared, right? If we can't be prepared, how do we exude the confidence for the
It's
seller?
also my first 3 years in the business of scripting every day consistently, every morning for 45 minutes to an hour, every single morning for 3 years straight.
Okay. So again, Ryan, you touched on that. What's one of the things that we're just supposed to be doing as realtors? We should be role playing and scripting.
5 rocks.
Is there anybody on this panel right now that doesn't role play or script at least a few times a week?
Now, if I'm being honest,
Well, when
since the team dissolved, I haven't been scripting.
that's where I was going to go with that, because
Yeah.
you had your team going, but you were working with them on a daily still, right? When you
Yeah.
were right, because you knew how important it was for them to start getting that concept.
I don't script. I've never scripted. I feel like I'm very different here. I'm sorry.
I feel like I want to go start working Listowel.
Yeah.
It seems like a great spot to be.
I think the big thing for Listowel is just being present, right? And it doesn't like you just need to think about your answers. I don't know if that's scripting, but it's just I've never scripted in my life, and it's more about having those personal connections. Like I'm constantly touching them in many different ways, and whether it's just casual conversations while I'm driving by or whatever, it's a different kind of way to get a listing. And I don't know if the city way of getting listings would work here, because you just have to be present, you have to be seen, and I don't know if those methods would work. So yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Well, we are almost at our time here, and before I open it up, I got a couple of questions here that I'm going to go through that have come in from the crowd. But before I do that, if you each had to pick one thing, what's the one thing that's most important when building your seller business? What your one piece of advice for everybody out there? What would that be?
Go. I'll share, like, my biggest regret getting into the industry was not putting a focus on building a database. Really, and we say to any newer agents, like, start there, make it a priority to get it as solid as you can. And when you're having conversations with people, tracking, as Jeff knows, has always been a struggle for me, knowing my numbers, tracking, although I know how important it is. I often tell newer people, like, learn from my mistakes, but living in your CRM, having notes, having follow-up dates, it really helps you build a good pipeline, stay top of mind with people. And at the end of the day, you can feel good that you're waking up and actually knowing what you have to do, even if it is something as simple as talking to 20 people a day.
Okay. Thanks, Ryan. Jeff, what's your one piece of advice? What's your one thing for everybody?
It's exactly what you said, confidence. If you can't present with confidence, you're losing the business to me. And that's what it's going to be. So the way that you gain confidence is the same way that I gained confidence starting off in sales many, many years ago. You have no way around it but doing the thing each and every day, over and over and over and over again, until you get confident doing it. There isn't a shortcut. Get off your ass, get out and door knock, get out and script, make the calls necessary, have the conversations you need to have, and do them every single day for 3, 5, 10 years. You'll become a master of this sport. It's a touch sport. You need to touch as many people as you can each and every day.
Jerry, what's your one piece of advice?
I would say, if you do want to focus on listings, then make that a priority in the beginning, and then build your systems and models around your current listings that you have to generate more listing leads and business. Because what I've learned, and I started out more online leads with buyers too, and making the focus on building a listing focused pipeline does transform your business.
Okay. Thanks, Jerry. And Ellen.
I think you just always have to focus on your seller. Don't focus on the money. Because if you do, it's never going to work out in your favor. Yeah, you really have to like the business to do well, I think. So, yeah, that's just my advice.
I would say that the four of you just gave an amazing wealth of advice to everybody out there. I want to thank you all again so much for your time. And before I do let you go, I'm just going to pull up the chat here real quick. I'm going to see what came in from out there. I have a question for Ellen. What type of flyers do you send out most often? What type of flyers do you send out most often monthly, like sold in your area or like a free home evaluation? And would you share with us the best flyer mail out recommendation?
Okay, the worst one is free home evaluation by far. Don't ever put that on there, at least locally. What I've always done is I put the market report on one side, and then on the back side, I put my current listings. If I didn't have any listings, I list my buyers, what I'm looking for, or even local events that you're potentially sponsoring. And then, so that's the monthly flyer I would send out to 4,000 people. And then I do have my open house flyer where it just invites the neighbors to obviously go to the open house. Yeah. And I saw another question, I think Mateen put it in.
Yep.
I use Canada Post. My print company is all corporate print and brand. So for 4,000 flyers, I think it's $800. And then I use the Keller Williams Canada Post account, and it's around $550. So yeah, I do spend a decent amount on flyers every month. But again, it's about people seeing my face. Make sure you put your face on these things too. I feel like when I see people in Listwell now, that first awkward introduction's already been done, and you're not having to introduce yourself as the local realtor kind of thing. And they right away go into conversation of, oh, I see your signs all around town. I see your face everywhere, you know? So yeah. Put your face on everything.
Put your face on everything. We're going to put that down as the final piece. Put your face on everything. Okay. Well, we are at 4:00 now, and again, thank you to our wonderful panelists for spending your time with everybody today and for sharing your knowledge and for your advice. We all appreciate you a ton, and thanks for coming out.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Bye.